The anime starts with our main character, Sakura Sakurakouji, a high school girl taking the bus home at night. But on the way, as she looked out the window, she saw a young man burning several people in a park. Although strangely, the flames the young man used appeared to be blue. Panicked, Sakura asked the driver to stop, and then she got off the bus to tell the police on patrol about the surreal sight she had just seen. Hearing that there was a murder happening nearby, the police then went to the park that Sakura pointed at, but they didn't find anything or anyone there, let alone a young man emitting blue flames. The next day at school, Sakura went about her day as usual without bringing up last night's strange incident to anyone at school. But to her surprise, her homeroom teacher introduced a transfer student before the study session started. And the new student, who claims his name is Ogami Ray, looks just like the boy she saw last night. Seeing a new student with a face they thought was attractive and cool, the girls in the class suddenly became excited. Sakura was the only one who looked at him suspiciously, afraid that the school had just accepted a criminal as their student. She was sure Ogami was the person she saw yesterday, the same person who burned those poor people with blue flames. So to prove her suspicions, Sakura approached Ogami during break time and asked him to talk privately on the school roof, reasoning that she had something important to talk about. But that only made the other students misunderstand. They thought Sakura was going to confess her love to the transfer student. Sakura herself is a popular student at school. She was gifted with intelligence and a supposedly beautiful face, making her the center of attention of the students at school. In other words, the students think of her as the perfect girl, so it's no wonder that many boys have a crush on her. With her popularity, all the students flocked to the school roof. They wanted to witness the rare moment when Sakura confessed her love to a boy, especially since the boy had just transferred to their school. And thus, Sakura started talking to Ogami. But contrary to what the students think, Sakura wanted to interrogate him about his alibi last night. So she asked him where he was last night and what he was doing then, to which Ogami casually replied that last night he worked part-time. But Sakura still couldn't trust him. She glanced at the glove that Ogami was wearing on his hand, thinking that he must have put it on to cover the burns after slaughtering those people last night. And so she told him to take off the glove. And again, Ogami can prove his innocence. Unfortunately, Sakura couldn't find any burn marks on his hands or anything to confirm her suspicions. The only thing she found was Ogami wearing a ring on his thumb. Realizing her mistake, Sakura apologized to Ogami for asking him to follow her to the school roof. And he doesn't mind it. He put on his gloves again and left the place after making sure there was nothing else she wanted to talk to him about. However, that sight confused the students about what had just happened between Sakura and Ogami. Considering their distance, they couldn't hear the conversation. Therefore, Sakura's best friend, Aoba Takatsu, then approached her to ask if Sakura was okay. But Sakura just gave Aoba a vague answer, saying she didn't expect it. Her words worsened the misunderstanding because now Aoba thought Ogami had rejected Sakura, and she said it so loudly that the whole school could hear her. Needless to say, the boys became furious as soon as they heard that. They couldn't accept that Ogami made Sakura sad by rejecting her. They even intend to take revenge on him, vowing to make him suffer for wasting Sakura's love. But Sakura didn't seem to care too much about the rumors about her. She is too focused on Ogami, whom she believes is a criminal, and she is determined to reveal his true identity. Thus begins Sakura's stalking of Ogami, and she does it wholeheartedly. She watches over Ogami when he plays basketball, even when he does a slam dunk and stars twinkle around him. She observes him when the other girls say goodbye to him after school is over, and she was still following him when he took shoes from the school locker. All of this made Aoba more and more convinced that Sakura was crazy about Ogami, and she said that directly when she caught Sakura watching Ogami from behind the locker. In response, Sakura said, yeah, she couldn't take her eyes off him. Because Aoba is talking to Sakura, she loses Ogami, but she still didn't give up. She kept trying to find him, hoping he hadn't gone far. But unbeknownst to her, Ogami had realized that Sakura had been watching and following him all along. So when her attention was distracted by Aoba, Ogami took advantage of that to hide from her. Sometime later, it was evening, and Sakura still hadn't found Ogami. So she returned to the park because she heard that criminals always return to their crime scenes. If that was true, she thought she might be able to find Ogami there. But then, Sakura remembered that she had visited the park several times to feed a stray dog named Inu. She also met the dog there this time, which she fed with rice balls. At this moment, when the dog was in the middle of devouring food, Ogami suddenly appeared. He had been secretly watching Sakura kindly feed Inu, which made him want to interact with the dog. To her surprise, the dog isn't afraid of Ogami at all. It even seems to like him and licks his face as if he is its master. The sight made Sakura gasp in astonishment because she knew Inu wasn't easy to get close to strangers. So if the dog acted like that towards Ogami, she thought he might not be a bad person. Plus, Ogami seems to be an animal lover, and those who like animals are usually good people. Sakura stopped daydreaming when Ogami asked if she was the dog's owner. She denied this, saying that the dog had no master. The last master has been killed right in this park by gangsters who call themselves G-Falcon. Several days later, Sakura returned to the garden to feed Inu when she heard someone's screams for help. It turned out that the screams came from a homeless person tortured by G-Falcon members. Sakura, who couldn't stand the cruelty, tried to stop them, threatening to call the police if they didn't stop beating the homeless man. But that threat only made the gangsters laugh because they weren't afraid of the police. Instead of running, they threatened her back. Realizing that she had to do something to stop them, Sakura beat them directly. And fortunately, she is good at Aikido thanks to the regular practice she does at the school club. Her Aikido skills are as good as her reflexes, making it difficult for her opponents to subdue her, even though they win in numbers. But no matter how good Sakura is in martial arts, she cannot fight against that many enemies, especially after one of the gang members uses a sneaky way of shocking her with a stun gun. Not only that, they even want to do passionate things to her. Seeing that, Inu, the dog, tried to help Sakura by biting the enemy, but that rescue attempt instead made Inu the target of the thug's torment. They beat Inu mercilessly, to the extent that the dog was seriously injured. At this moment, it was Sakura's turn to protect Inu, but there was nothing she could do with her current condition. The thugs beat her again until they were tired of her. But before they could kill her, Ogami suddenly appeared near Inu. He then checked on the dog's condition, realizing the severe injuries, decided to kill it. Then, with a cold expression on his face, he removed the glove covering his left hand and incinerated one of the gangsters with blue flames. Their partner's death sends the whole gang into a rage. A moment later, they looked at Ogami and tried to gang up on him, but Ogami calmly raised his left hand again and burned them all until their bodies were scorched to ashes. For the second time in the last few days, Sakura saw one more the scene where Ogami was burning people with his strange power. Her suspicions were right all along. Ogami was the young man she saw the other day, and now that he walked slowly towards her, he put his left hand to her face and, in a low voice, said, "Burn!" Instantly a blue flame came out of his hand and burned Sakura alive. But strangely, Sakura woke up in her room feeling fine, as if everything that happened last night was just a dream. But she knew it wasn't a dream, so she rushed to her parents to ask what had happened to her last night. Unfortunately, her parents couldn't give her a great answer. Her father said that he found Sakura lying unconscious on the front porch, but since he found her unharmed, he brought her to her bedroom afterward. All of these incidents made Sakura afraid of Ogami. But even so, she still has the courage to go to school, where she will meet Ogami. Sure enough, he started watching her from a distance, making her even more uncomfortable with him. For that reason, Sakura asked Aoba to stay away from her because she was afraid that Aoba would become Ogami's target if she was seen anywhere near Sakura. But she couldn't tell Aoba why she told Aoba to stay away, and that made Aoba misunderstand Sakura's intentions. Aoba thinks Sakura now hates her. Unable to bear it anymore if she continues to live in paranoia, Sakura finally decides to find out the truth. So she invites Ogami to talk after school in a crowded place to prevent him from doing anything strange to her or emitting blue flames. But to her shock, here Ogami casually confirmed Sakura's suspicions. He admitted that he killed the G-Falcon members last night because that was his job, cleaning up society's trash. And Ogami said that as if it was a normal thing. Even when Sakura said that what he did was evil, he responded that he was worse than anyone. Hearing that answer, Sakura kept trying to convince Ogami that what he did was wrong and that he should accept the punishment. She kept lecturing him until he got fed up with her. So without another word, he took off his gloves and then put his left hand on her face. Luckily, Sakura reflexively removed his hand from her handbag, leaving only her handbag on fire. Frightened, she ran away from Ogami, but he quickly caught her and burned her alive. But then again, Sakura didn't die from that attack. Her body is still intact without the slightest wound, making Ogami amazed. His rough guess was that Sakura was a rare species immune to his supernatural abilities, ultimately making her unkillable even after being hit by the blue flames. The scene then switches to a young man who is calling Ogami. The young man knows that Sakura already knows his secret, and now he wonders why Ogami still hasn't finished her off. In response, Ogami informs him that he has found a rare human immune to his fire, and that human is Sakura. It turns out that it's not only Ogami who has strange powers. Next, we are shown two people in a duel using their unique abilities. One of them has ice elemental powers, while the other one can manipulate his voice into explosions. But their duel lasted only a short time. Moments later, the man with the power of ice escapes with a mysterious person. Back to Sakura, she is always followed by Ogami wherever she goes, making one of her fans jealous. He would even attack Ogami if it wasn't for Sakura stopping them. She was afraid that if that student attacked Ogami, Ogami might kill him. But again, Sakura's insistence on protecting Ogami makes the students misunderstand their relationship. That's why Ogami asked her to calm down. He promised he would not do anything while at school, let alone use his powers in front of the students. Just when he said that, Ogami met one of his fans named Nenin Fujiwara, unique because her eyeballs have different colors, and for some reason, he suddenly got angry when he saw her eyes, to the extent that he immediately put his left hand on her head, ready to blow it up. Luckily, he could control his emotions again. He apologizes to Nenin for his impoliteness, reasoning he did it because she reminded him of someone he knows. And that person seems to be shown in the next scene. He has blonde hair that is exactly like Nenin's. His eye color is also different from one another, just like hers. When school was over, Ogami received another call telling him about the mission he had to do later that night. But Sakura caught him just as he was hanging up the phone, making her suspect that Ogami was about to commit another crime. Thus, she was determined to follow him wherever he went to prevent him from killing anyone again. Unexpectedly, Ogami allowed Sakura to do whatever she wanted. He even gifted her a puppy, which he claims is the offspring of Inu. With that, they went to an apartment that Sakura initially thought was Ogami's. But to her horror, it turns out that the apartment is filled with people that Ogami has to exterminate tonight. Indeed, tonight's mission is to kill the Yakuza group that conspired with the police. Once again, Sakura tries to stop Ogami, but again, he ignored her pleas. He massacred the criminals mercilessly, leaving no one behind. But apparently, his real target wasn't in the apartment. So he peeked out the window, and he found the person he was looking for was in a car parked outside the building. The man is Tabata, the police chief who has conspired with the Yakuza. Now that he has managed to find his target, Ogami only has to finish off Tabata. But he didn't want Sakura to keep following him and bothering him, so he hit her right in the stomach. That one punch was enough to knock her unconscious. After that, Ogami left the apartment and approached Takata's car window. But Ogami doesn't kill him right away. Instead, he asked Takata about the whereabouts of someone named Hitomi. Takata panicked as soon as he heard that. He told the driver to step on the gas while he called Hitomi to report that a code breaker agent was hunting him. He begs Hitomi to help him, but Hitomi doesn't want to. Meanwhile, Ogami catches up to Takata's car. He jumps into the car's front window and is about to smash it when someone blocks them in the middle of the road. Without much ado, the newcomer kills and destroys the car along with everyone in it, including Takata. It turns out that the mysterious man is Ogami's partner, a fellow code breaker agent. His name is Toki Fujiwara. Code Breaker is a group of assassins with special abilities under the government. There are only 6 members, and Ogami Rei is the 6th Code Breaker. The next scene takes us to Eden's base, the organization that controls Code Breaker. There Ogami is given a new assignment to kill a politician named Tabata. But while they are briefing Ogami, his superiors are rude to him, even calling Code Breakers their slaves. In response, Ogami kills them with his firepower, saying that their relationship is that of partners, not master and slave. The next day, Sakura woke up again in front of her house, making her parents wonder what had happened to their daughter. Her behavior lately is very strange, but she chose to lie to them and, to avoid further questions, she left for school. But when she opened the house's front door, Sakura found Toki there, waiting for her. He said he must replace Ogami in accompanying Sakura before introducing himself as the 4th Code Breaker. In other words, he is Ogami's senior. The senior, however, did not bring Sakura to her school. Instead, he takes her to a park under the pretense that he will tell her about Ogami's true identity there. But as soon as they sat on the park bench, Ogami suddenly appeared and attacked Toki. Indeed, the 4th and 6th Code Breakers do not have a good relationship, and even now, they are fighting using their special powers. That is until Sakura stops them. At night, Ogami is about to tell Sakura that he will carry out his mission, which forces Sakura to follow him to prevent him from killing people. But Ogami won't act alone in this mission because Toki has been asked to be his partner. Even though they don't get along, they still try to be professional in carrying out the mission. Once everything is ready, Toki then uses his ability to open the compound's gate, which is a government facility for researching special abilities. It was the facility they would be attacking that night and where their target, Tabata, was located. While Toki is trying to open the gate, Ogami explains to Sakura that Toki can manipulate magnetic fields, which allows him to move any metal object. That's why it's not difficult for him to open the gate. Toki's ability also proved very useful in stopping the bullets fired by the guards there. And even better, he could return the bullets to the guards, leaving them injured by their weapons. But then a whirlwind suddenly appeared in front of them, and those who were hit by it were instantly turned to stone. As it turns out, the whirlwind was caused by the power of 2 guardians who possessed unique powers from government experiments. Their abilities, which come from their fueled backpacks, allow them to manipulate wind and water. But as Ogami and Toki started their fight with the 2 guards, their backpacks suddenly malfunctioned, forcing them to retreat temporarily. That benefits them, who can continue their mission without breaking a sweat. They then entered the facility building, and while looking for their target, Toki explained to Sakura that Codebreaker was part of a secret organization under government control. It's just that they are under the direct command of the Prime Minister, which allows them to kill corrupt officials or police without getting into trouble. And their target this time, Tabata, is one of the evil politicians they must exterminate. While they were touring the facility, Tabata was in another room, examining the children who would be used as guinea pigs in his experiments. But moments later, he received a report from his men about code breakers who had barged into the building. Thus, he left the children and went to the research lab, where he found Ogami and the others. Here, Toki uncovers the crimes committed by Tabata, in which he kidnaps innocent humans and sells their internal organs. Toki then says that his boss, Eden, doesn't like Tabata's secret activities, and that's why he and Ogami are now visiting this facility. They had come to kill Tabata. But before they can finish Tabata off, the two guards who had retreated earlier reappear, forcing Ogami and Toki to prepare to fight. The guards decide to split the task. One will fight Ogami, while the other will take care of Toki. And thus, the battle began. The guard, who became Ogami's opponent, immediately released his water ability. But Ogami can fend off the water attack with his fire power. Meanwhile, another guard confronts Toki with his wind ability, which can turn people to stone. But the wind attack could not hit Toki, who could defend against it by throwing various objects into the wind. Enraged that his attack didn't work, the guard issued an even bigger wind attack, forcing Toki to take Sakura out of the room. It was because Sakura couldn't block or dodge the attack. Once the wind hits her, she might turn to stone. For the next few moments, Toki and Sakura continued to run down the hall to avoid the guard's wind attack. But over time, he started to get annoyed because he had to keep dodging his opponent's attacks. So Toki analyzed his opponent's weak points until he realized that his opponent's strength came from the backpack he was carrying. Hence Toki attacks the backpack until it falls off his opponent's back and opens. However, neither Toki nor Sakura expected that the backpack contained a boy. Meanwhile, Ogami is still fighting his opponent in the room. They pitted their strength by releasing their respective abilities, resulting in a clash between the energies of fire and water. The result, Ogami, with his fire ability, wins the duel. Annoyed that his ability level was below a teenager's, the guard slammed down his backpack in frustration. And just like his partners, the backpack contained a small child. The difference is that it contains a girl. And it turns out those little kids have special abilities that Tabata uses as a weapon. Realizing the horribleness, Toki and Ogami go berserk. They killed the guards so viciously that even Tabata's men who saw them were frightened to death. But unfortunately, it could not save the lives of these children. After thanking Ogami and Toki for saving them, the children die. With the death of his two mainstay guards, Tabata becomes frightened because now Ogami and Toki turn their attention to him. He tried to escape from there, but his efforts ended in vain. Ogami manages to catch him. But just as he was placing his left hand on Tabata's face, a little girl in a wheelchair suddenly appeared in front of them, and surprisingly, she called Tabata her dad. This is where it was finally revealed that Tabata had been kidnapping children and using them as experimental material to cure his daughter's illness. Her name is Chisa. For that, she needed new internal organs. Tabata deliberately chose children with special abilities as guinea pigs to prevent them from turning into killers like code breaker agents when they grew up. But Ogami doesn't care about Tabata's reasoning. He had come to kill Tabata, and that was what he would do. But again, he stopped when he was about to kill his target. This time the distraction came from Sakura, who angrily hit Tabata, calling him a selfish human. Because even if he wanted to heal his daughter, that didn't mean he had the right to sacrifice the lives of other innocent children. Sakura's words seemed to make Tabata realize his mistake. While crying, he asked Ogami to kill him, hoping he could atone for his sins by dying, and Ogami granted his request. He burns Tabata alive with his blue flames right in front of Chisa's eyes. This action made Chisa angry to the point where she was eager to kill Ogami. As a child with special abilities, she can move objects around to attack someone. But unfortunately, she can only control light objects, like paper. Of course, paper alone can't hurt Ogami, no matter how much paper she uses to attack him. Seeing this pathetic attempt, Ogami responds by saying that he can understand Chisa's hatred for him. So he told her that he would wait until she grew up. And if she still held a grudge against him, she was free to try to kill him. It turns out that Ogami spoke like that for a reason. He wants Chisa to have a reason to live, even if it is to take revenge on him. Meanwhile, Toki chases after Tabata's men, who have fled with experimental data. Realizing he was in danger, he contacted Hitomi for help. But strangely, after he talked to Hitomi, his body suddenly electrified. And what's even weirder was that he hurt himself, as if he had been hypnotized. With this, Toki picked up the man's cell phone to talk to this Hitomi person, and it turns out that Toki knows him. Hitomi is none other than the first former codebreaker, as well as the mastermind behind the research. With their mission completed, the special abilities children present at the compound are taken to another research facility. Tabata's death was covered up thanks to Prime Minister Fujiwara's influence. In news reports, his death was stated because he forgot to put out his cigarette before falling asleep. The cigarette started a fire in his house, eventually killing Tabata. Despite his success in covering up the incident, the Prime Minister is still faced with another problem. As the mastermind of Eden, the organization that controls Codebreaker, he must think of a way to deal with Hitomi. Previously, he had sent 43 special agents to find Hitomi's whereabouts, but all of the agents were reported to have mysteriously disappeared. Hearing the report, the Prime Minister suspects Hitomi is responsible for the agent's disappearance. The Prime Minister's guess was correct. And what's worse, Hitomi uses his electric abilities to turn the corpses of the missing agents into puppets that he controls. Hitomi then sends the undead to attack Ogami's school, forcing him to use his abilities in the school area to protect Sakura and himself. But this time, Ogami's enemies are numerous. Although he can fight off the agents at first, his energy is gradually drained until he collapses. But fortunately, when the agents were about to attack him, his homeroom teacher, Kanda, arrived with a firearm and shot the undead. It turns out that Kanda is not an ordinary schoolteacher. She is an agent sent by Eden to supervise Ogami. Once she saw the undead, Kanda could immediately tell they were under the influence of Hitomi's ability. Thus, she asked Ogami and Sakura to leave the school while she prevented the undead from entering the school building, considering the other students were still there. However, Ogami didn't obey the order. Even though his strength runs out, he still tries to fight the undead to protect his friends. His action even made Sakura touched. Now she realizes that Ogami is not a boy who doesn't have feelings. In the next few minutes, Ogami fights against his enemies until he completely runs out of energy. But luck is still on Ogami's side because Codebreaker number 3 comes to his aid. This newcomer, named Yuki Tenpoin, can turn sound into his weapon. Moments later, Codebreaker number 2, Haika Masaomi, joins the fight. With his ability to control light, Haika can ensnare the undead before defeating them. Even though they manage to destroy the agents, Ogami still can't regain his strength. He even collapsed and lost consciousness. According to Kanda, Ogami had overused his abilities, which eventually caused him to be in a lost form. This condition will last for the next 24 hours, during which time the sufferer of Lost will experience symptoms of the disease. The symptoms are different for each Codebreaker itself. And in Ogami's case, he is suffering from hypothermia. While Ogami lay helpless, Sakura got the chance to get to know Kanda and Haika better. Haika claims that he, apart from being the Codebreaker himself, is also the judge who controls the Codebreakers in their missions. This role gives him the right to evaluate other Codebreakers and give them a score, which depends on how well they carry out the mission. However, Sakura and the others couldn't talk for long because Hitomi's troops might come back again. Thus Sakura offers that they take Ogami to her home, where he can recuperate safely. They all agree with her idea, but considering that Hitomi has been watching over Sakura all this time, Haika, Yuki, and Kanda decide to go there so they can look after Sakura and Ogami. But to their surprise, when they arrived at Sakura's house, they found that her father, Gotoku, was the head of the famous Yakuza clan in Japan, Kizakura. Even so, Gotoku greeted them kindly, like a normal father would greet his daughter's friends. And Sakura's mother is no less friendly than her husband. Then she took them to the guest house so they could all rest. But just when they set foot in the guest house, Yuki smelled Toki's distinctive scent from the direction of the wardrobe. Sure enough, it turned out that Toki had arrived there first. He was in his lost form, which made his body shrink and resembles a child. That's Toki's typical symptom every time he is at lost form. But even though his body was like that, Toki purposely came to that place because he wanted to tell Haika valuable information that Hitomi might be after Sakura because he has heard that Sakura is a rare species immune from Codebreaker's power. The next day, Ogami regained consciousness after a night of rest. And when walking around Sakura's residence, he saw a sword that reminded him of Hitomi. Gotoku, who had secretly seen Ogami glaring at the sword, then handed the sword to him. But before Ogami can ask why Gotoku gave it to him, they hear the sound of an electrical explosion from somewhere in the house. It turns out that Hitomi has come to raid Sakura's house to kidnap her. Seeing her in his arms, the Codebreakers sprang into action. They attack Hitomi with their abilities while trying their best to withstand his electric attacks. But Hitomi is too strong for them. Even Ogami couldn't do anything in front of him. That's because Hitomi is none other than Ogami's former teacher. When all hope seems lost, Haika finally appears and pulls Sakura from Hitomi's arms with his light lasso. Although, his action made Sakura fly into the air. She could have fallen hard to the ground if not for the arrival of Codebreaker number 5, Rui, who jumped and caught her body. At last, all 6 Codebreakers have gathered in one place, and this is where Hitomi reveals his plan to take revenge on Eden. However, Ogami doesn't care about the conflict between Hitomi and Eden, nor does he care about the cause. All he knows is that Hitomi has betrayed him. Thus he and Toki attack Hitomi again, although the result is still the same. Their attacks didn't work on him at all. Gradually Hitomi grows tired of the fight, so he takes out a large ball of electricity, intending to kill all the code breakers with it. But Sakura reacted quickly by imitating Piccolo when protecting Gohan from Nappa's attacks. Soon after, Sakura stepped forward, spread her arms outstretched, and screamed while enduring the electric attack. Luckily she has immunity, so Hitomi's attacks do not affect her. He even said that he would give up if he had to fight Sakura. And with that, he left the place. But it turns out that everything has gone according to Hitomi's plan. He deliberately causes a stir to lure all the code breakers to gather there. After that, his partners could easily kidnap the Prime Minister. News of the kidnapping of the Prime Minister was received by Hulk a little later. He was both angry and worried, angry at being tricked by Hitomi and worried about the Prime Minister. But strangely, Toki casually asked him not to worry about the Prime Minister. Toki even left after saying that, as if he didn't care. He preferred to return home, where he later met his sister, Nenin. Amid the uncertainty, Sakura was surprised by a cat that suddenly stood near her, and the cat could talk. But Help then tells her it's just Yuki. Indeed, that was Yuki's lost form. He turns into a cat if he overuses his strength. But they didn't have much time to discuss Yuki and his lost form. They had to plan quickly and determine what they should do next. And what's more, they still don't know why Hitomi didn't kill the Prime Minister immediately. If Hitomi hated Eden, he could easily kill the Prime Minister instead of kidnapping him. All the steps that Hitomi took finally made Help deduce that he had other plans, and therefore, they must remain alert. A few moments later, the code breakers, who were curious about Sakura and her immunity, decided to find out more about her by asking her parents. This is where it was finally revealed that Sakura was not the biological child of Gotoku and his wife. They adopted her after finding her in front of their house one night. When she was found, her body and clothes were covered in blood, even though she was still a child at that time. Thus, even though they still have minimal clues, Sakura and the code breakers split up to find Hitomi. And it was at this moment that Rui remembered why she could find out that Hitomi raided Sakura's house. It was because Haika had told her about the attack. That makes Rei suspect Hulk of conspiring with Hitomi. She deliberately gathered all the code breakers at Sakura's house and thus weakened the defense at Eden's headquarters. Sure enough, after Rei confronts Haika on top of a bridge, Haika indirectly admits he is a traitor. And now he is unhappy with the fact that someone knows his secret. He had to get rid of Rei. But before he could attack her, a sudden explosion was nearby, which distracted Haika and Rei. Haika thinks it is Hitomi who is about to start his plan. The explosion then damages the bridge, forcing Rei to use her shadow abilities to hold the bridge from collapsing. And that makes her an easy target for Haika, who instantly kills her with his attack. After taking care of Rei, Haika meets Sakura to take her to a building, claiming that Ogami is there and wants to talk to her. It turns out that this building is where Hitomi held the Prime Minister he had kidnapped. Hitomi is also there, and he explains to Sakura that Eden has been after her all this time because they were after her special ability. Eden has even researched her abilities, which they plan to use to thwart Hitomi's plans. That's why they sent the code breakers, including Ogami, to her school. It was none other than to protect her. But that plan has failed because Sakura has become Hitomi's prisoner. Then he only had to carry out his plan to bomb the entire city. He actually still has other big plans besides that, but he still keeps his plan a secret from Haika because he still can't fully trust Haika. Thus, to prove his loyalty to Hitomi, Haika reveals to Hitomi that he just killed Code Breaker number 5, Rei. This news made Sakura angry. She grabbed Haika by the collar, demanding that he explain why he had the heart to do that to Rei, but he quickly subdued Sakura by slamming her to the floor. Meanwhile, Kanda has secretly followed Haika into the building, and now she is preparing to sneak inside and attack Hitomi with her gun. Unfortunately, Haika manages to catch her before she reaches Hitomi. Elsewhere, Yuki is reporting about Haika's betrayal. Yuki was sure that Haika had betrayed them because moments before, when he was still in his lost form, he saw Haika attack Rui with his own eyes. Because he couldn't do anything in a cat's body, Yuki followed Haika until he entered a building. And now Yuki brings Ogami to the building to investigate. But again, Haika became an obstacle for the code breakers. He attacks Yuki and Ogami as soon as he sees them, causing a fierce battle. Their fight lasts for some time, so Yuki, realizing they have wasted too much time, tells Ogami to head out first to confront Hitomi while he continues fighting Haika alone. Hearing that, Ogami agreed, and so he went upstairs, leaving Yuki behind. But to his surprise, Ogami found Hitomi had controlled Kanda, who was now pointing her gun at him. However, unlike the agents that Hitomi previously controlled, Kanda is still alive, and even her consciousness is still a little bit present, as evidenced by how she asked Ogami to leave. But apparently, Hitomi's influence was too great for her, making her unable to control her body anymore. A moment later, Hitomi orders her to shoot Ogami, and thus she does so obediently. But the bullets alone can't hurt Ogami, who can block it with his hands. That made Hitomi choose another way to provoke him by ordering Kanda to shoot herself. However, Ogami doesn't want to let that happen, because for him, it's better if Kanda died in his hands rather than die in Hitomi's control. Luckily, Sakura reacted quicker. Before Ogami's attack reaches Kanda, she pushes Kanda away and saves her from dying. Not only that, Sakura even managed to neutralize Hitomi's control over Kanda, thanks to her special ability. Seeing all of their actions, Hitomi finally decides to tell them why he does things they consider to be crimes. He showed them the many clocks tacked to the walls of the room. The clocks were no longer functioning, and Hitomi had left them like that on purpose because the hands on the clocks indicated the time of death of the code breakers in front of them. That way, he could remember how the code breakers died because of the Prime Minister. So, according to Hitomi, the Prime Minister has never used code breakers to eradicate crime or noble goals but for his personal intention. And every time a code breaker dies, they will soon be forgotten and even branded as heinous killers. That's why Hitomi hates the Prime Minister. He couldn't forgive the Prime Minister for taking advantage of the code breakers, and he would make the Prime Minister pay for his mistakes. Afterward, he would make everyone acknowledge the code breakers and admire them. However, Ogami cannot agree with Hitomi's thoughts. He doesn't care about people's assumptions and how they judge code breakers. In fact, he thinks that code breakers don't need people's praise and recognition. The ideological differences between them inevitably lead Ogami and Hitomi to fight, and so they started attacking each other. It is at this time that Hitomi's partner, whose name is Yukihina, appears. With his ability to manipulate ice, he tries to attack Ogami and Sakura, who are unaware of his presence. But fortunately, Toki arrived at the right time. He fends off Yukihina's attack and thus saves Ogami and Sakura. In the end, after seeing that the code breakers had gathered there, Yukihina chose to back off. The scene then shows us Hitomi's past, where it turns out that he was recruited as a code breaker when he was 16 years old, and he had occupied the position of the 6th code breaker when he was still a rookie. At that time, Hitomi was completely different from what he is now. He always carried out his missions to save people, especially children, from rampant crime without questioning his superiors. He even has aspirations to create a world where children can always smile and play happily without fearing the threat of crime. He shared his ambition with Haika one day while watching children playing by the river, and Haika expressed his support. He promises to help Hitomi in creating the world he hopes for. 4 years later, when he was 20, Hitomi was assigned a mission with his partner, Codebreaker No. 5, named Haruya. It turns out that he survives the mission, but not Haruya, who dies horribly. And it was this incident that made Hitomi realize that those below him would replace every codebreaker who died. In this case, Hitomi, who was the 6th codebreaker at that time, leveled up to become the 5th codebreaker, replacing the late Haruya. Promotions like this are something to be celebrated under normal circumstances, but he becomes depressed because this is the first time Hitomi has lost his comrade. 6 years have passed since then, and Hitomi has leveled up again to become the 3rd codebreaker. That means 2 codebreakers above died in those 6 years. Then one night, Hitomi and the other codebreakers were assigned to face a villain who was very strong and had special powers. The villain was so strong that all the codebreakers died in battle. Hitomi is the only survivor, and he fails to kill his opponent. Hitomi fell into great sorrow after that. Even his promotion to Codebreaker No. 1 couldn't shake his sadness. Because they needed new people to replace the codebreakers who died, Eden began recruiting candidates, one of whom was Haika, who later took the position of Codebreaker No. 3. And after Haika joined, Hitomi told him about the strange cases that had happened to the codebreakers before. At that time, Hitomi saw how his former comrades suddenly couldn't control their abilities. And he didn't just find the case once, but several times, making him suspect something was wrong here. For this reason, he asked Haika to investigate the strangeness. Sometime later, a new generation of codebreakers was formed, with Hitomi occupying the top spot. Haika, No. 2, Yuki, No. 3, Toki, No. 4, Rei, No. 5, and Ogami, No. 6. At this point, Hitomi still acts as a senior who always guides and protects his juniors when they carry out missions. He is determined to prevent the dark events of the past from happening again, and will do his best to keep this new generation of codebreakers alive. One day, Hitomi was asked to accompany Ogami on a mission. He does acknowledge Ogami's abilities and greatness, but at the same time, he sees Ogami as a dangerous person. It shows from how Ogami always acts cruelly when carrying out missions. Ogami is also often too focused on killing the bad guys, so much so that he forgets the true purpose of his mission. This tendency is seen when he is assigned to Hitomi and Toki to save a boy. At that time, Ogami is too busy killing criminals and arguing with Toki, so in the end it's Hitomi who saves the boy. He even had to save Ogami and Toki because they didn't realize that one of the criminals they were supposed to kill was still alive. Hitomi ends up killing the villain right before the villain shoots his gun at Ogami. Thus, Hitomi invites Ogami to have a private talk. In this conversation, he asks what Ogami's goal is to become a code breaker. To which Ogami answered that he wanted to eradicate evil. Hearing his naive answer, Hitomi then tries to correct Ogami's misunderstanding by saying that eradicating evil is not the only goal of Code Breaker. They especially have to protect the weak, those who are neglected by the law. Several days later, Hika reports that the villain responsible for the deaths of Hitomi's comrades in the past has returned and is wreaking havoc. After receiving the mission to kill the criminal and his members, Hitomi and the other code breakers rush to the scene. The code breakers had no difficulty defeating the criminal's minions, and they faced their main target in a short time. Here, Hitomi is determined to kill the criminal to avenge his comrade's death. But the criminal instead offered the code breakers in front of him to work with him. Because if they combined their strengths, he said, they would surely be able to get whatever they wanted. But, of course, the code breakers refused his offer. They would prefer to see the criminal die and agree to let Hitomi do the honor. Soon after, a duel ensues. And at first, the villain underestimated Hitomi, considering he had the upper hand over Hitomi in their last duel. He didn't know that now Hitomi was much stronger than before. With just one attack, Hitomi even managed to kill his opponent. The other code breakers who see Hitomi's strength praise his prowess, and he complimented them back. He believed this generation's code breakers were very strong, so he didn't need to worry too much about their safety. The scene then switches to Hika reporting the success of his investigation to Hitomi. According to his findings, the odd thing that happened to code breakers in the past, where they couldn't control their abilities, could be because they couldn't enter lost form after overexerting their strength. When that happened, they would enter code and, or in other words, meet their doom. The Prime Minister and Eden knew about it, but they hid it from the code breakers for some reason. And that's what made Hitomi angry at the Prime Minister, to the extent that he attacked his boss. As a result, he was expelled from the organization, and his status as a code breaker was revoked. He was even branded as a criminal who must be hunted. Back in the present, Hitomi announces via live broadcast the news of the Prime Minister's imminent execution. Through the same broadcast, he also showed the remaining time before the bombs he had planted at several points in the country exploded. But apparently, Hitomi didn't just plant big bombs, he had also planted several small bombs, which he detonated moments later. Instantly people all over the country were struck by terror. Meanwhile, the code breakers begin trying to find the bombs, with Yuki using his abilities to detect where the bombs are. Much to his horror, he finds that Hitomi has planted many bombs in many places. It's not just code breakers trying here. Eden agents and Yakuza from the Kizakura clan are also tracking the Prime Minister's whereabouts. After some time, they finally manage to locate him, who turned out to be in the Sky Tower. Wasting no time, they alert the code breakers to save the Prime Minister. And it is Toki who will carry out the rescue mission. As for Yuki, he chose not to participate because he wanted to turn off the bombs. After Toki and Yuki left for their respective destinations, Ogami went to find Hitomi and asked him to stop his madness. But he refuses, so Ogami has to challenge him to a fight. Shortly after, Ogami takes out the sword he received from Sakura's father, imbues it with his blue energy, and then swings it to attack Hitomi. But as one might expect, his attack could not penetrate Hitomi's electric barrier. Instead, Ogami was thrown after Hitomi exploded his electric shield. While Ogami and Hitomi fight, Yuki has slowly found the location of the bombs after receiving help from a mysterious caller. It was the caller who told him the exact locations. However, the situation is still far from safe, especially since Yukihina is now going to Eden's facility to free children with special abilities who have been used as guinea pigs. But to his surprise, he finds Rei there. It turns out that she is still alive after receiving Hika's attack on the bridge, and now, she will stop Yukihina. And so the fight between Yukihina and Rei started. The battle was closely fought, as they used their full abilities. Rei with her shadow element, while Yukihina relies on the ice element. The scene then returns to Ogami, who is still fighting Hitomi. Their fight was stopped for a moment because they again argued to determine which of them was the most righteous and whose motivation could be justified. However, as expected, they could not reconcile their ideological differences, so the fight resumed. And again, Ogami is powerless against Hitomi's electric attacks. After a few moments of being electrocuted, he collapses, and his blue fire energy weakens. There's nothing more that he can do with his condition. He couldn't even get up when Hitomi was about to kill him. But then, Sakura tries to imitate Piccolo again. She spread her arms out in front of Hitomi, blocking him from attacking Ogami. But this time, Hitomi realized it would be useless to attack Sakura with his electric powers. So he strangled her while at the same time he told her that the bombs he planted would explode in less than a minute. And what's worse, he has planted those bombs all over the world. That way, he can create a new world that only people with special powers will settle. However, the bombs never explode because Yuki has managed to deactivate them. And as it turns out, the person who had told him about the location of the bombs was none other than Hika. During the last few episodes, he pretends to betray Codebreaker and Eden to thwart Hitomi's plans. Yukihina realizes the failure of Hitomi's plan, and so he abandoned his fight with Rei to free the special-powered children at the facility. But to his surprise, the nursery at the facility was empty. There weren't any children there because Rei had evacuated them long before this. Moments later, Yuki comes to Rei's aid after he confirms that all the bombs have been deactivated. But just when Yuki arrived, Yukihina ran away from that place. Back at Hitomi, he is now furious at Hika for thwarting his grand plan. At this point, the battle between the first and second code breakers was inevitable. But apparently, the gap in power between them was too wide. After only a few exchanges of attacks, Hika realized how formidable his senior was. But Hitomi is not only strong, but he is also smart. He even planned to reactivate his bombs by channeling his electrical energy through the Sky Tower. At this time, the Prime Minister is still on top of the tower with Toki, his son, who has managed to find him. He begs Toki to save him, but Toki intends to kill him instead. In the end, Toki abandoned his intention, however. He chose to save his father and untie his bonds. At this moment, the Prime Minister admits he was a jerk. He taunts Toki for not having the guts to kill him, and the ridicule didn't stop there because he revealed that Toki was just his guinea pig. At first, Toki never even planned to become a code breaker. He is only a substitute for his sister, Nenin, who is sick. After the Prime Minister finished showering Toki with ridicule, Hitomi's electricity began to envelop the tower. Rui, who had arrived at the tower with Yuki, tried to block the electricity by covering it with her shadow's power. But her shadow only lasted a few seconds. It was because Hitomi attacked her continuously without giving her a chance to release her shadow power again. The other code breakers don't just stand by watching Hitomi attack Rui. They tried to attack him, but none of their attacks were able to hurt Hitomi, who was getting angrier by the second. Seeing the code breakers fall one by one, Sakura returned to stop Hitomi. But once again, she ended up being strangled by him. Luckily, before Sakura choked to death, Ogami got back up. He then removed the ring on his thumb and opened the lock that sealed his true strength. With his berserker mode active, even Hitomi's electric powers don't work on him. But Hitomi doesn't want to lose to Ogami. Next, he struck a pose as if he was about to cast a Genki Dama, and sure enough, balls of electricity suddenly appeared above his hands. Soon after, other code breakers tried to prevent Hitomi from throwing the ball, but, as usual, they are useless in front of Hitomi. Only Ogami can stop Hitomi in this situation. With his strength, he can absorb Hitomi's power before burning him. However, the effects of Ogami's attack have a fatal effect on Hitomi. Hitomi enters the code end phase, which means his death is near. He could still breathe now with what was left of his strength. But his death was inevitable. With a smile on his face, Hitomi then reveals to the other code breakers that he acted alone all this time because he didn't want them to experience code end like him now. He knew he would die soon but couldn't let things end like this. His hatred for Eden and the Prime Minister was running deep, and the only thing that could appease him was the Prime Minister's death, and so he rose again, intending to use his remaining strength to assassinate the Prime Minister. But again, Ogami stops Hitomi. He beats Hitomi to make him realize how wrong he is. In response, Hitomi hit him back. The two boys beat each other for the next few seconds while giving inspiring words. Finally, Ogami delivers the final blow that seems to break Hitomi's spirit. He then grabbed Hitomi's clothes, screaming why he could change like this. Hitomi replied that he didn't want to put the code breakers in danger. And besides, only he has a hatred for Eden, and he is the one who should do justice. And that hatred seems to make him blind to the fact that the code breakers care about him. He realized it too late, and he apologized to them. He also asked them not to die in vain like himself. When it looks like everything will end peacefully, the Prime Minister then shows up to mess things up. He taunts Hitomi arrogantly, which makes Hitomi explode with rage. His killing intent was back again, thanks to the Prime Minister. Fortunately, the code breakers could restrain Hitomi before he killed the Prime Minister. And with this, Hitomi breathed his last, finally allowing the Prime Minister to sigh in relief. After that, the Prime Minister goes back to insulting Hitomi even though he is dead. The insult only stopped after Toki punched him in the face. Once everything is back to normal, the Prime Minister drives with Hika. In the back seat of the car, he congratulates Hika on his success in devising a plan to stop Hitomi. But while he was rambling, his body suddenly electrified and he vomited blood. It turns out that Hitomi's electric attack had hit him and entered his body before finally activating. Seeing the horror in front of him, Hika couldn't help but gape in shock. But a moment later, he smiled happily because the Prime Minister had finally died. After that incident, the codebreakers split up to live their own lives. So did Sakura. She still goes to school, but now Kanda is no longer her homeroom teacher, and Ogami is no longer a student. Since then, she has never met Ogami again. As for Ogami, at the end of this anime, he is still busy fighting to eradicate crime. And with that, this anime ends.